Hey, Dr. Rob.
Hey, Tammy, how are you?
I'm great, and we already have questions. You ready to rock and roll?
Well, I just wanted to make a small statement before we
Okay.
start, and that was just an interesting day today because a very famous figure in the Me Too movement is going to jail for rape.
I saw that.
And I watched that case closely because I know a little bit about how easy it is to discredit victims in a courtroom. And this was one situation where I really hoped that that wouldn't happen. And I think justice perhaps has been done or started to be done. And, no one is happy about this, I'm sure, but at least there is some hope that if I speak up as a victim, that someone might hear me and things might change. And that makes me feel good. So I just wanted to start with that.
No, I appreciate that because you're right. I saw it on the news feeds as well today. So,
Well, in our world, it kind of resonates on a bunch of levels. So thank you.
mm-hmm. So the first question is, do you offer couples weekends? Yes, we do. Couples Healing from Betrayal Workshop. I will tell you more. Or Prodependence Intensives. We will, but probably not till fall, especially for those who have been to SI. Great question, and I think it's particularly helpful if you've been to the SI is Seeking Integrity Los Angeles. It's our treatment program, and we can talk more about that. But the Couples Healing from Betrayal Workshop is limited to 4 couples. The next offering is March 13th through 15th. It's particularly healing both for the individuals and for the couple. The goals are, I have this up, but the goals are rebuilding trust, genuine forgiveness, intimacy, establishing and implementing healthy boundaries, communication skills, learning how to have respectful and productive conflicts, grieving losses together, which I think that is often missed, healthy sexuality, spirituality.
That's often missed.
That's true too. Spirituality, enjoying time playing together, planning for continued recovery and healing. So those are offered once a month, usually. April, we're not sure about, but anyway, you can reach out to me, Tammy at seekingintegrity.com, and it's TAMI, for more information and availability. But the couples that have attended in the past, they're co-facilitated. Paul Hartman and our clinical director for Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, Karen Brown, co-facilitate those, and people talk about, they are really helpful. They plan out at helping their coupleship, but they also, experience some healing, I think, from an individual standpoint. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think that any workshop, whether you come to us or wherever you end up going, I think the important part is not only that it clarifies where you are now, but it also really gives steps forward. And I think what we try to do, and I hope others try to do, is give the couple steps forward, but it often involves what each individual has to do themselves and work on themselves. So, and part of it, I think, is the partner witnessing, like, oh, you're my husband, you need to work on this, or, oh, I'm your spouse and I need to work on that, whatever those things are, if it's forgiveness or grief or whatever the thing is. So yeah, I think they're helpful. I think they're helpful anytime anyone wants to come forward and work on themselves. I'm going to cheer.
Yeah, and I think with this, where there's other couples who are, have experienced that, there's, you see that you're not alone, and you're also getting, some perspective of like, oh, this could work for us. So I think it's really beneficial. But as far as the Prodependency Intensive, yes, but later. So if you haven't already registered on our sites, please do so, and then you'll be on the email list, so you'll be updated for those offerings. But I did put a link for the Couples Healing from Betrayal Workshop on the chat, so everyone should be able to see that. I attend the Prodependence thing on Sundays. I'm assuming that's the drop-in groups at 6 p.m. with Angela Spearman, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And there was one member who kept telling someone to run because of their length of time with someone. How is that prodependence? When I asked us to refrain from saying something, they defended themselves and said it was okay. Why is it okay to tell people to run from relationships? That's a great question.
I don't think that, so I take 2 steps back. Prodependence is a book that I have written that is really kind of taking off, and it is focusing on the area of therapy and support for family members of addicts. So the population that I wrote the book for, just like codependency was written about, is for spouses and loved ones of addicts. And I proposed a different way that we might look at that population, rather than you partners are already sick when you meet us and you have all these issues that you bring into our relationships, and then we end up with addiction and you end up acting out like we do. I just never liked the codependency model, and I thought it was very pathologizing. So I've, with a lot of research and a lot of hard work, created a new model look at how we can be more respectful, I believe, of the love that a spouse gives or a partner gives to an addict. And I know for me, you know, the people who loved me, even though I had hurt them, even though I had let them down, even though I had done horrible things, they loved me when I was working to get better. I wanted to heal for them. And those were really important things. So I really am very much a proponent of couples working things out. And you'll also hear me say on the stage when I talk to professionals, it's like, you know, if you've been out there a little bit, you know that if to ever find someone that you might enjoy their company, like what they have to say, but you can also tolerate all their differences and you can live with them and you can spend your lives together. Those people don't come along very often. So if you if you run into one of them, try to make it work. And so this is one of the reasons why I really encourage couples to focus on healing together. However, codependence does not say that anyone has to stay in a relationship. If someone's done, they're done. If someone's being abused or hit or physically violated, if I feel in my relationship that my partner is not willing to pull their part and I am in a relationship where no matter what I do, I'm trapped, I don't think there's anything about codependence that says I need to stay. What codependence says is that if I choose to stay, most often it's because that person is moving forward and they're growing, and my choice at staying, I'm kind of holding the hope for the relationship while they're really working on their problem. And if I choose to stay, it's because I believe that things will get better because I already am seeing signs that things will get better. And, you know, that's a reason to stay. Or I'm staying because I love you and I'm willing to hang in there with your addiction until you get better. I'm going to detach from the addiction, but I'm going to stay in your life. There are many ways of doing it, but codependence, and I think, Tammy, by the way, just to say to you, I've already become aware that this is going to be the problem. Just like I could have told you when Codependent No More what the problem was going to be 20 years later, and we see it, which is people being blamed for love. In the similar way, you know, I think the fear that I have about codependence, I want it on the record, is that I'm somehow saying that people should stay with abusive people or they should stay with addicts who refuse to get sober and don't want to work on themselves. And that's not what I'm saying at all. The essence of codependence simply says that if two loving people find each other and one of them is broken or breaks down, and the other one decides to stay to try to make it better or hold on to the hope or work together to healing, that I believe that two people working on it together will get further together than they will as individuals who are working on it. That two people who are committed to healing are going to heal faster and more completely than individuals who choose to heal on their own, because we are stronger in our relationships. So if you can heal your relationship and you can find it a source of strength, and you do feel like you're getting back or seeing the hope for getting back what you put in, by all means stay and try to work on it. If the person is hopelessly mired in illness and they refuse to get better and you are going to be the reason for their misery in their mind, then get out and get out quickly, because you need to live your own life. I don't encourage anybody to live with someone or love someone who's unwilling to grow themselves. And, you know, we're all growing all the time, and most of our growth we just acknowledge and take in because we're with each other every day. But the kind of growth that this calls for, recovery, is really big changes. And I think both partners, when they're up for that and doing that together, they're going to do it better together. But if both partners are not up for it, neither one can pull the load for both. Not for very long.
So I really appreciate that perspective and you clarifying, like you said, something that you see as a potential viewpoint. Yeah, well, or a viewpoint, you know, that people are, and mine is more about the process. So I wasn't there. You know, I'm only reading this little snippet, but a drop-in group, how they typically function, or in my opinion should be functioning, is if I share and I say, I'd like, you know, I'm inviting feedback. I want people to give feedback. Then I'm inviting that in there. If somebody is just sharing, they are also free to just share and not get a response from someone. So I don't know what the situation in this particular case was,
right.
but you know, like this is not 12-step, but like a 12-step meeting, you take what you need and you leave the rest. And
Right.
so having one person's perspective, you know, I think it's okay to give feedback as long as someone isn't, you know, trying to shove something down someone's throat. It needs to be a respectful and safe community, and that's what we've tried to create for that. So
I
I will reach out to the moderator and see if I can learn a little bit more about what, the situation was.
But I've had addicts in addiction groups that we run. And by the way, all these groups, we don't charge for any of them. And it's all free. I'm just saying that, so you guys know that, the ones that are being talked about here. But if an addict comes in and they say, I'm going to act out today. I acted out yesterday and I acted out today, but I just want to be with you guys and I don't want to be alone. We're not going to say, well, why would that person be there? Because they're still struggling with acting out. They're always welcome. And I think the partner who says, screw this, I'm giving up, I'm out of here, that may or may not be how they feel tomorrow, but you can't deny them how they feel right now. And I wouldn't argue with anyone who feels just like they want to give up. I would say I really understand that, even if you're not in that place. So not everyone who comes into these spaces is in the same place as you might be. All are welcome, as long as people are not undermining recovery.
Right. And are respectful of each other and their journeys. So.
But I'm glad you brought it up, because I don't want anyone sitting in a room and feeling like this doesn't make sense to me. I'm glad you asked. So
yeah,
thank you.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Long-time married senior couple, 2 years since discovery and intensive, have a trained couples counselor. We are committed to making it work and have had good support on Monday nights. My wife still has trouble with having the AP in bed with us. I attend SLAA and AA have sponsors. How do we stop having the third party in bed?
Oh, what's the AP?
Affair partner.
Ah. And what has he said exactly? My
So,
wife has trouble that in her head. Is that?
Has trouble with having the affair partner in bed with us. I attend SLAA and AA have sponsors. How do I stop the third party in bed?
Well,
So
I think
they've got a trained couples counselor.
right. I think for one thing, you're talking about it. I hope that you both are talking about it. I think that this is a great thing to see a couples therapist about, but bring this very issue in, because, it depends. Like, if she's deeply hurting and wounded, there are ways to work on her grief. If you guys are if she's in a place where we're together and it just falls into my head, we could find some playful ways to, wrap her up in a ball of paper and throw her out of the bed. I mean, there are many ways we could work with this. As a therapist, I think you have to be compassionate about the fact that you brought this person into your bed. And, honestly, on some level, it may never go out of your spouse's head. Some people who have trauma in the past will keep things in their head forever. And, you're not responsible for it being in her head forever, but you certainly are responsible for it having happened. And I can certainly understand after 2 years where both of you would want it to be gone. I mean, here's the question. Does she want this other person to be out of your bed? Does she want this other person out of your head? And if she does, then what are you doing together to make that happen? And again, this is a very unique couples issue, because it could be, and I just want to say this, you might be being intimate and then she looks away and she starts thinking about this person and then she wants to push you away. Well, maybe the answer is to simply start looking back in each other's eyes and you're saying, I'm right here. I'm not, it could be all kinds of things. So I think it's a reasonable request. I think it's a good therapy process. But I don't know where you are exactly in it in order to tell you what to do. But what you're asking seems very doable. Last thing, if there's trauma, real trauma, where your wife is, even years later, just imagining this person when they don't want to and having sleepless nights and, all of a sudden coming to you and saying, are you at it again? And I'm talking about 2 years later. She may have some trauma work to do, not because there's anything was innately wrong with her, but because this situation was so traumatizing that she might need to work in EMDR or some form of trauma treatment to get those images out of her head. And there are ways to do that. Yeah, and if you want to ask us again, write Tammy at Seeking Integrity. We can write you about EMDR. By the way, there's a wonderful trauma site I always want to mention to everybody. It's that site that Jamie Marriage has. It's called, this is just a site a colleague of mine has. We did a podcast together, and she did an amazing job of pulling together so many great resources, understanding trauma, understanding infidelity, understanding EMDR, and all the kinds of therapies they do with trauma, and what is trauma, where does it come from, and I want to say it's called this Trauma Explained, something like that. I think is what it's called.
I just put her website on the chat. So,
but I really a fan. She probably couldn't see you where any of you are, but boy, if you want to understand trauma, she has a great website, and I always like to refer there. Anyway, well, let's more questions. We got a bunch lined up.
Well, and just one really, you like a very practical thing is like, if it was in your bed, it'd be like, buy a
Oh,
new bed, buy new sheets, paint the walls. You know, I mean, I
right.
would physically change. I'd rearrange where the bed is in the room,
Oh, yeah.
whatever. I would make it different and reclaim the space. And I don't know if that, you know, if it's just the vision, or, you know, the,
It's all of it. It's all of it.
yes. Yeah.
It's that she needs to go buy a new bed. She needs to buy new sheets. She needs to feel like it's a safe place for her, if that actually happened in your home.
Right. Okay, so the next one. Hi, y'all. I bet somebody's from a little southern area. Hi, y'all. Thank you for your service. I'm currently in recovery for about the past 4 months. When engaged in physical sexual intimacy with my husband, I'm having flashbacks, visualizations of places, but I have no recollection of traumatic experience there. I am having a lot of difficulty saying or probably staying present, and often try to distract myself since I cannot keep in the present moment. I am not sure how to stay present without seeking distraction.
Yeah, I think that this is a from well, it could be many issues, but there's two things that come to mind. First, the one that would be obvious, which is, you know, you stop acting out or whatever it is you were doing, you start to focus on life, and then you think, oh, well, everything will be fine now that and I think this is reasonable. And I'll just say this for many of you. I've stopped drinking. I've stopped gambling. I'm going to support groups. I've stopped sexing. How come I'm not better? How come I feel worse? How come I'm struggling with new things now? Like I can't get things out of my head. And so just a thought for those of you who are not familiar with trauma, a lot of us drink and use over our emotional challenges with certain circumstances, especially related to intimacy or sex. When that kind of distractor is taken away, the shame, the alcohol, the gambling, whatever, the porn, when you remove that, sometimes other feelings can come up that behavior has been masking. And it's not unusual for someone who's recently stopped using and drinking, someone who's recently stopped sexually acting out, to when they enter what any of us would consider healthy sexuality, they feel uncomfortable. They're having thoughts or images in their head. They shut down. I've had women say to me on another site I volunteer for, I've had women say, you know, I had so much sex all the time when I was using, but now that I'm sober, it's like I don't want to have sex with anybody, and I don't understand that. And most often what that means is that the drinking and the using, the acting out, whatever it was, really allowed that person to push down thoughts and feelings from the past that now they have nothing to push it down with. And if you can't push stuff down anymore, it's going to start coming up, especially when you're vulnerable, like in a sexual situation. So to me, these are trauma type issues that would require the kinds of things we talked about, a trauma evaluation, perhaps EMDR, some somatic therapies. I do want to say also, though, that women do get ADD, and there are women who have attention deficit. And for women who have attention deficit disorder, you might be meaning to be sexual with your partner, but then you're off thinking about something else, because people with ADD can struggle to stay focused on one thing. And it doesn't mean that there's something that you don't love or you don't care, or it could also be that, in other words, if you're distractible in multiple situations, you know, you can't stay focused on reading, you have issues around remaining focused. You start something and you drop it. You start something else and you forget what you were doing, that kind of thing. You never find your keys. If you have standard symptoms for ADD, it may be that some of the way you think leaves you kind of struggling with that, and it might require a different kind of intervention. Again, I don't know, but you are asking all the right questions.
Next question. You may remember that I shared last week that the guy I was dating asked me whether I date a guy that has history of sexual assault after I asked him what his deal breakers were. He didn't follow up for the entire week and then sent me a text on Saturday and did not acknowledge it. He asked me that. I told him to call me, and I directly asked him why he asked me that, and that was really scary. It's been a rough week for me. He said, no, that's not my history, and thought you were just throwing around scenarios, which is ridiculous. I ended up telling him that I thought it was so inappropriate to ask that and then not follow up, that I won't be able to move forward. He was apologetic, but continued to talk about himself and his support for women's issues. I'm just trying to make sense of why somebody would ask that if that's not their history. Any thoughts? I'm not going to see him again, and I'm proud of myself for telling him.
Well, I'm just so proud of you for doing that. Like, it's hard
Yeah.
for me to think anything else. I hear the part of this. I really hear the part of you, which we all have, which is like, well, maybe it was innocent and maybe it didn't mean anything. And maybe I'm looking away from a good situation. You're not. Nobody brings up, and for those of you who were not around last week, this is someone who is dating someone and they've been on their third or fourth or fifth date. And the person they're dating said something about, I wonder if it would bother you if someone who you were dating had a sexual offending history. So, and then was not willing to talk about whether he was talking about himself or, listen, run. Yes. And here you are, codependent therapist, run. And I just admire, this is really a skill. I don't know if you've gained it or not, whoever you are, but to say, you know, even though this person says, no big deal, it's not a problem. In other words, don't look at this. Don't, what is it in the Wizard of Oz? Don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain. You did. And you said, I'm not comfortable with this. And even if it's just, you know, someone behind a curtain. I don't like people who hide behind curtains. And I don't want to, I love that you love yourself enough to not date this person again. And I love that you called him and said, hey, this bothered me. And like, how healthy is all of that? So to you, I say, dating is a numbers game. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to date, and this is the honest research-based truth. If you want to find a partner that you can get along with and enjoy over time, you probably have to date, I'm so sorry, single people, probably 10 to 12 different people in a year, going out for coffee, getting to know them once or twice, and then moving on in order to really find someone that would be good. And the problem is we often give up too soon. And so many people I've talked to after a situation you just went through might say, oh boy, now I know what's out there dating. And gosh, I went on 4 dates and look what I ended up with. What's the point? And I say to you, don't break your stride. Keep going out there and meeting people. You will find what you want. Tammy, do you have anything?
Just ditto. I'm so proud of you for, you know, for holding your boundary, but also for, you know, like you said, it's a rough week, but you know, like I asked him to call me and he did. So, you know, for asking what you needed in order to resolve this to the best of your ability. But I really, yeah, I'm proud of you. Keep, you know, like Dr. Rob said, don't break your stride, you know, next. So I just.
And by the way, I want to say from his perspective, doesn't make him a bad guy. He may be someone who's coming to terms with stuff in his life and is trying to be more honest, but then got scared off when you pursued his honesty. For someone else who wasn't as evolved as you, that might work. But for someone who, like you, is in a place of, you know, I kind of need to know what your deal is if you're going to bring it up, and he can't speak to it and wants to point away, that's just not someone who's healthy enough, regardless of where they're at with that issue. So good for you. Go out and find the right person.
So the next one, this is not a question, just a statement to the two of you. I want to thank you for the websites and sharing information. I am 3 weeks post-disclosure, and my wife and I spent countless moments listening to the different webinars and reading the information you have provided. It has given us both a lot of insight and things we can talk to each other about. It has helped a lot. Thank you. Oh, that's so nice.
That was it?
Yeah, that was it. It was just a comment, but yeah,
I'm sorry,
thank
Tammy.
you. No, I'm kind of tearing up. So
can I tell you about my trauma though? Let's talk about me for a moment. When someone says, I just want you to know I have this, that, and they're being really sweet, what comes up for me is, where's the but? I'm waiting for someone, it's just my stuff. I am waiting for someone to say, but you did this wrong, you did that wrong. And so that's why I said, like, that's it. Because I'm like, you know, that's my stuff. So that's so sweet. Thank you, whoever said that. We do really give away a lot of stuff. And we really try and we do our best. And I'm really grateful that you guys see that.
You know, one of the things I've noticed I've been doing on calls is, I am so passionate about recovery that I'll tell people I'm really passionate about recovery. So if this seems like a lot, you know, I mean, I want people to get it. I want people to have healing. I get so sad when I hear people who, you know, where, you know, they're just not willing. The fear of taking those forward steps is greater than their willingness to do it. There could be really good things on the other side and they're not willing. And then the whole system, you know, their loved ones, everybody gets stuck in it. And it doesn't have to be that way, but unfortunately, you know, some people choose that. So.
You know, Tammy, what you said I think is really important, because I can remember many, many years of doing private therapy, and somebody would come into me and I would talk to them about what we need to do and we're going to get started. And I wouldn't see a lot of stuff in their face. I'd be like, no, guys, like it could get better. And what I've realized with some people is that, and maybe this is what you're talking about, they're so afraid to let themselves down again that they don't want to hope again. They're afraid that if I try, or if I believe I can get better, or if I make more promises to my spouse, I let them down. I just don't want to do that again. I'd rather not have hope. And that's what makes me sad, because I have seen a lot of miracles with people who are willing to just keep showing up for whatever life has to offer them in the healing, So thank you for that. And what made you tearful, Tammy? You have to tell everybody now.
What made me tearful is the gratitude. When this is helping somebody, just this little bit, it's why we keep showing up, and spending our evenings here with whoever, online, wherever, because, if you can get just that glimmer and go, okay, I got this for this moment, great. And all the YouTube, I mean, there's hours you could binge watch, webinars. I get calls and people will recognize my voice from this, and great, like if that continuity can be, of any comfort, great. So I'm grateful, thank you for your kind words. So
where's the but?
Now I have to blink and see if I can read this. Okay. How do you rebuild sexuality and trust with an addict? That's a great question.
Well, that's a very big question, because it really depends on where you are and where the addict is. I mean, if you're 2 years in and you're both working really hard, and I would suggest a whole bunch of ways that you might rebuild trust. If it's been 3 months and you have reasons not to trust fully yet, and you're then it's a whole different road. So timing is everything. I will say that I wrote a book for addicts to figure out how to heal their relationships and what they need to do, or really I wrote it for men who cheat. And it's called Out of the Doghouse. If you got this and looked at it, it might help you understand where your partner is in the process of accepting how he or she has hurt you, how they're learning about how they've treated you. And if you throw it at them, give it to them, they might even be interested in figuring out how to make it better with you. But I think that there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And I was just, there was a couple, Tammy, that went through our program, and I spoke with them recently, and they were saying, we're doing really well, blah, 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 but we don't know, this is interesting, how to, well, actually it was this wife, and she said, I think my husband's doing really well, and I'm really impressed with how he's doing, but I still have worries, and I don't know, and I don't want to like run up to him and say, I'm worried, how do I make sure that I can be reassured, without having to ask? And so what I suggested to them, and I would suggest just for any couple here, is with issues as hot as these, you still have to live your life, still have to move on. So, and sometimes we do have to just put it all aside except for therapy, or except for here and there. I think when things start to get better, it's really not something we want to just say, okay, well, I'll assume you're doing well, and I'll just, So what I suggest to couples is make sure you have a 10-minute once a week. It's on your calendar. The kids are in bed, or you've already watched your favorite show, and whatever it is. And this is when we talk about sex addiction. This is when we talk about cheating. So in your minds, first of all, for the addicts, I think it's a great thing to know that you're going to have to talk to your spouse about this week, every week. And that means you're going to be less likely to act out. You're going to be less likely to take risks, because you're going to have to face that person, and you don't want to lie. And I think for the partners to know that we're going to come to you and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I'm doing. Not in absolute detail like we would with a sponsor, but enough to make you feel okay. And so, I think that you have every reason to expect that we would do that for you and with you, so you don't have to drag it out of us. Or I haven't heard about it for 3 weeks. Does that mean he's at it again? Or does that mean, you shouldn't have to worry about that. So just having a check-in around this can make a lot of difference. And sometimes for couples who end up kind of grilling each other over dinner, it's helpful to remember, we don't have to have this conversation now because the kids are about to sit down or whatever, but we are going to talk tonight at, that kind of thing. And you can make it twice a week or 3 times a week, but it can help to make it in a certain time and place that can make everything easier.
That seems like such a practical, good tool to help provide safety and accountability.
But who would want to do it? Let's sit down once a week and talk about the most terrible thing that we've ever been through together. I get why you wouldn't want to, but it's a good idea.
Next question. For an SA who has become sober within the past few months and for whom boredom was always a major trigger, What are your thoughts about long-standing numbing out activities like watching TV, playing games on his phone, or listening to news podcasts? Are these activities okay because they're being used in place of addictive acting out like sexting, or are they considered numbing out and dissociating into fantasy behaviors that encourage dysfunctional coping?
Well, I think this is a spouse, and I think they already have an opinion. That's just, I'm just listening with a little training there. But I do want to say, I want to answer the question. You know, I think it's, look, my sponsor told me that a year of her recovery, I had a female sponsor, that a year of her recovery was spent watching movies, because there was no, she was so much struggling with her addiction that the only way, she went to meetings, she went to movies, she went, or she sat home, like she white knuckled. That was what she had to do to get through it. And I do think that, and by the way, maybe there's some, and for all of us, there is some guilty pleasure in losing yourself in things. I know even Tammy and I are Netflix fans, and we compare the shows we watch. But if you're in early recovery, it's much more important. It's fine to soothe yourself with distractions, the healthy ones, ice cream, TV, whatever, but it's more important that you connect with other people. And I would say to you that if your spouse is spending equally as much time going to a meeting, going to a 12-step group, or being on a team, or singing in a choir, or volunteering for church, but an equal amount of time engaged with people in life activities, recovery and not, that's just as, then spend all the time on a weekend watching football that he wants, or she, you know, movies. But I think that equal time must be given to connection, because the opposite of addiction is connection. It's not spacing out on TV. And please, for you supporters of addicts out there, we do, our lives are not fun in recovery. There are a lot of work and a lot of feeling and a lot of doing things we don't want to do, and all of that. And sometimes it's really good for us to be able to disappear into something as long as it's harmless. But if you are noting that you're not getting as much focus and attention as you would like, and you're right there, I would be concerned that it is just too easy to disappear into things rather than do the hard work of connecting to people.
We all need a mental break now and then, but if it's a mental break and not the complete numbing out for, you know, I love what you said about the, you know, if there's balance with it, you know, then okay. But if it's just a substitution, like I used to spend all this time and now I'm spending all this, the same amount of time, and I'm still not connected with my family, I'm still not, you know, doing anything in recovery, right, that would be it, you know, then it feels like, oh, I just switched, that's all. So
or you're stalled.
Yeah. What would be the most valuable thing you could tell the partner of someone who has recently discovered they have a sexual addiction, a partner who has been betrayed and is now working through everything involved with disclosure and trauma?
Well, the most important and best thing I can tell any partner is this isn't your fault. There's nothing you could have done to make this happen. There is nothing you can do going forward to make it happen again or not happen. That his or her involvement in their addiction is up to them. And you get to have all of your feelings and express them however you need to. This is your time to clarify what's been missing for you, what hasn't worked for you, what you've been upset about. And, you know, you're not going to spit it out all at once, but I think it's a really good time for partners to inventory their own lives and see where their needs are getting met and how their needs are getting met. I think it's a really good time for partners to look at the outflow in their lives and see where they're giving and where they're not, and is that working for them? And, you know, it's a great reevaluation time for yourself. It's a really important time for you to hold on to the fact that there's nothing you could have done to know this if you didn't know about it, nothing that you should have done to prevent it, and nothing you could have done to make it happen. This is the biggest trap that I see partners falling into. It's one of the reasons I wrote Prodependence, is that by giving partners a message that somehow this is your fault or you contributed to it, it kind of gives the addict an out, and that's just not true. You know, if he was angry at you or felt hurt by you, or you weren't having enough sex, he could go play chess, he could go buy a car, he could get a divorce. You know, going and finding sex is not the automatic response to an unhappy marriage. That choice is based on something that he wanted or she wanted. So most of all, I think you need to forgive yourself and be kind to yourself and love yourself and accept all the feelings you're having.
Yeah, and I would add, I mean, you're grieving the loss of what you thought you had. You're grieving the loss of often I'm hearing this entire thing, was a lie, so you're now stuck questioning, was there any truth in any of this? And so just understand that is all normal. Like all those, feelings you're experiencing are really normal. And I will also say, like, I really believe there's hope. So, when the person with the addiction is truly willing to do what is necessary to be in recovery and to work on healing and to rebuild trust, the relationships that I think come out of that are very different. You will never be as naive as you were when you said I do, and we're going to be happy, and it's going to be the storybook.
And they'll always have my back, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the honesty and connection, the true connection that you can build, with time, is, I consistently hear that, it's better in a very different way than what they had before. So it's one of those things where if you're willing to hang in there, be kind to yourself. This isn't your fault, but with work, the dividends that are paid over here are really good. So,
well, and I want to add that also, for the relationships that have been together for a while, you have both made investments in that relationship. And even though there were things going on that hurt the relationship, there are many, many investments that were made, whether it's your home, your children, your family, your church, those are still there. And, deciding how you want to either reinvest in those things or renegotiate those things is important. So I'm really glad you're asking the right question. I think in early recovery, first 3 months for spouses, it's a lot about don't blame yourself. Don't look for reasons that you should have seen things or should have known things or should have done things, or it's just not your fault. You're in grief. You're in trauma. Hang in there. Oh, and I have one more thing. Oh,
sure. Please. No, go ahead.
What's my other favorite thing to say to spouses, but it's not very nice. Crazy is your new normal. A lot of times spouses will expect, well, when am I going to feel better? When is this? You're not for maybe a year or more. Like, your life has been trashed. Your beliefs have been stomped on. Your heart has been wrung out. And that's a reality. And no matter how much the person feels terrible about it, no matter how hard they're working, no matter how sincere their desire to make it better, you're still going to hurt for a while. And that is to be expected. And you can't hurry that process up. It just doesn't work that way.
So the next one, you guys are really super helpful and generous. Great perspectives on how to start dating again, like dating a good amount of time before jumping into bed. That's really a good idea. And going on a number of dates if needed. Learning how to date in a healthy way. Hi, Dozer. A healthy way, and letting go of abusive past partners and embracing connection is so important. My recovery network helps me learn to love myself, not to tolerate certain behaviors. And these meetings reinforce that I'm on the right path. Thank you. So,
Tammy, I think they're trying to make you cry tonight. That's what
I was going to say, it's really easy to do.
They're lining up.
I know. I've got tissues handy. So, okay. After disclosure, my wife has been having more trouble managing her anger about the money that I spent than the sex with prostitutes. Any tips for restoring financial trust?
Mm-hmm. Is this person willing to tell us how much they spent? Feel free to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Well, I really think I can be very silly about this particular answer, and I don't mean to be flip about it. So let me just say that, you got a number yet?
Yes. 15,000.
Okay. Well, I would start a savings account and I would start putting money into it so that you can hand your spouse $15,000 to do whatever he or she wants to do, whether that's put in your kid's college fund or buy you a new car, whatever he or she wants to do with it. But I would be willing to recreate that and give them the chance to decide what they want to do with it rather than having it taken away from them. And you can start that a dime at a time. It can take you years to build, but at least your willingness to say, I don't just get to get away with taking this from you with an I'm sorry, and I'm willing to work to put it back into our family. I think that would work for me.
Well, and I think the caveat to that is it needs to cost you something. Like, I can't go golfing because I'm going to put the money that I normally would, whatever, I don't know, I'm making that
right. Sacrifice.
Yeah, it needs to be something that was of importance to you, and now I'm going to
Right.
I'm giving it. But I really like, I think transparency too. It's like, often people have multiple credit cards and all of that. So I think being fiscally accountable and transparent will help also restore a degree of trustworthiness.
Here's another way to look at it. You can look at your life and say, how many hours would it take me to earn $15,000? And then say, that's the amount of hours that I owe my relationship. And how am I going to find the time to put that in, because I owe it. There's another way to do it.
And maybe your spouse gets to pick. I want this,
I'll
that, or
take
the other thing. So yeah.
hours.
Yeah. So that's the end of the questions. So this has never happened before, where we've had
Oh yes, it has.
Where we've 20 minutes in with 20 minutes left had time, and no one's asking questions. So
Len, let's talk a little bit.
All right.
So first of all, for those of you who are not familiar, we do have a podcast. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. It is the same name as a show I do on In the Rooms, which is a weekly Q&A I do on Friday nights, just like this. Those are free as well, and those are inside of a recovery environment as well. And In the Rooms is a great place to get to meetings and check out recovery across different, eating, drugs, and alcohol, all of that. I've written about 7 or 8 books on this topic, and you can find that on Amazon. And trust me, I will make 12 cents for every book you buy, because that's the way the publishing industry works. But I really do want you to have good information, and I have tried over the years to really be very current. In fact, right now I'm working on a book about pornography and porn addiction, because that is the issue right now out there for young people, is struggles with porn. Someone has a question.
Yes, I was going to say, how to shut us up. Ask a question.
Yeah, shut me up, right? Ask a question.
Bouncing off a question asked earlier, is disclosure necessary if it was very early, like 1 month in the relationship and before marriage?
Can you restate that question in a different way, Tammy?
Apparently the infidelity happened very early in the relationship with this,
Right.
So before the spouse was a spouse, this happened. And so then, is disclosure necessary? So I think maybe elaborate on what disclosure is, not just telling, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, disclosure is a process. It's a process that we go through in therapy with trained therapists who work with each member of the couple individually, so that we have different goals. For spouses and partners, the goals are to get a lot of support, educate yourselves, really get a lot of grounding, and some healthy habits on play in board, so that if and when you're ready to hear this information, you have the support internally and externally to deal with it. For the addicts, it's about really very carefully going through inventories and lists of all of the behavior that you've engaged in during the time you have been in your relationship from day one. Well, even if you didn't tell them you were going to be, even if you hadn't told them you're going to be monogamous yet, trust me, it matters to your partner that you were seeing them and you were seeing someone else. And if they don't know that now, they need to know. So it is a history of sexual and romantic activity that you've had outside your relationship during the course of your relationship. Anything that your partner does not know about. It's not a list of detailed sexual acts. That's not important. It's not a list of body, this person had big this and small that. It's not about graphic. It's more like, on that year, I did these things this many times, and I did these things those many times. And when we were on vacation 3 years ago, I did this. And this is how much it cost financially, and this is who knows about it. It's just getting it all on the table. Why do we do this? It's very simple. We want to restore equity in the relationship, an equal playing field. You addicts know that you have information your spouse does not. If you haven't done this, the spouses are wringing their hands and making themselves crazy in their heads about what they do and don't know. Once it's on the table and they finally do know everything, a couple of things happen. One is, for us, I have to say, it's a bit of a relief. And it's also an opportunity to see if we have any worth to that person at all, because in that moment, they have to make a decision. Do they think that we have worth to them beyond the pain we've caused? And I'll say this to all the addicts, even though I don't like saying this in front of the spouses, because I know that you may think me inconsiderate. But there's nothing for me like working with a sex addict who's been in a relationship and they've done disclosure, and they were kicking and screaming, boy, because they knew if they told their partner this, it was going to be XYZ. They were sure of it. But a year or two later, here's this couple in a much better place, having really healed, really become more equal, really grown, not because they're playing guessing games, but because all the poop was put on the table at the beginning to stink and smell and get cleaned out, and so that everybody can move on. And so we do this process to help partners feel like they're not in the dark anymore, that they have a path they can go by that is lit, and that gives them hope if that's what they want to do. But what happens is there's something that happens where an addict looks up, and I've had these moments where they say, he or she stayed with me, even though I did all that, even though, like, they look back and like, I don't know, I would have stayed with them. And instead of, by the way, in a codependent way saying, well, they must have been really sick for staying with me, I would like us all to say, wow, I wonder if those spouses see things in us that even though we've really become not the person they loved, they can still see those good things in us. And they hope and they pray that if we really work on this, that maybe we can again become the people that we were, or even better. And the reason our spouses stay is not because they're troubled. It's because they have faith in us, and faith that our relationships can mean something again. And so for all those reasons, we do disclosure. I didn't answer the question, Tam. I answered your question, which is, what is disclosure?
Well, and I appreciate that. One of the things that I thought of, and you answered this as well, it's like you're laying all the poop out there. This one feels like there's something extra tied to it, like it was a best friend, or there's a sister, or what there's some other reason why you're really afraid to tell this one. And so like Dr. Rob was just saying, though, it's like, if you're always holding back the secret, and discovery is very different than disclosure. So what Dr. Rob was talking about was disclosure, where there's a therapeutic process. It's handled well. It's handled really well. The outline of what you're going to say. I mean, it's all of that, versus like, I need to tell you this, and that's traumatic for partners to hear. But the fact that you're asking about this tells me that there's something that you're really fearful of, and you're holding a secret that, and secrets are not good for relationships.
This sounds like women's intuition, Tammy. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to trust you on this one.
Okay. So the next one is, how quickly into recovery do you think disclosure should happen, especially if they're trying to make the relationship work?
So I really actually do have thoughts about this. I think that 90 days, 6 weeks is probably plenty of time. It depends, if both partners are able to go to therapy and be in the process, and you have the resources to work through that. And why 6 weeks? Why not in the first week? What I know about working with people who are addicted is that we can often get so deeply into our issues that we forget half the stuff we've done. And especially if you've been acting out in a kind of an unconscious kind of, path for a long time, just going through it. You may not remember 3 years ago when you were in St. Louis that you did this, or 12 years ago when you were at that conference. We actually, during that 6 week period, we go through your history, or the addicts. This is a part of what we do in treatment. This is one of the ways we have treatment, really going through histories and helping you understand. I don't want you to go to your partner with anything that is minus an important piece. I don't want you to go to your partner with anything that says, oh, I'm so wounded and won't you forgive me? I didn't mean to hurt you, because that would be problematic. I don't want you to come at your partner with information that is so graphic and heinous that they'll never want to be with you again, or no less so it takes time to shape and organize what you have to tell them. On the other side, partners need time to find supportive relationships and a path forward to be able to handle what you're going to tell them, and to also kind of get support for what they've been through. Partners really need a lot of support, a lot of love, a lot of nurturing, a lot of guidance, just getting through this time, really getting through this time. And this 6 week period before I would do disclosure for the partner would be a time of building support, building other relationships. For example, if we did disclosure today and my spouse said, I don't want to look at you, I don't want you home, where is she going to go for support? Who's she going to call? Who's going to be? Will a girlfriend come over if I'm not going to, just so that we both, and what am I going to do if I'm not wanted home that night? So all this stuff is planned out and organized in advance.
Okay. Next
Wait,
question.
Tammy,
Oh,
okay, I
yeah.
have to say, how is it that we had no questions and now we only have 9 minutes left and we have 7? Like, how does that happen?
Because everybody thought of things.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Or we're not going to get to 7. So,
Okay, so we're
um,
just going to go through and
oh,
so
can you do the one that says starting sobriety?
starting sobriety, should I stop porno completely or little by little?
Okay, I think that's such a basic, good question.
I do
Um,
too.
so here's, first of all, I think there's nothing wrong with trying to wean yourself off something. And if you can, God bless you. It may mean you're not an addict. If you're able to say, well, I'll just look at porn on Wednesdays and Fridays, and that's it for 1 hour or half an hour, whatever it is, and that works for you, I think that's great. Good for you. My experience is that people who are addicted aren't able to do that. And they do things like they find their fingers drumming on the table. When is Friday coming again? Because I got to get to that porn again. Or they are unable to keep the promises they made to themselves. So by all means, excuse the word, try to wean yourself off, but do it in a concrete way. Do it with paper and pen. Do it with a commitment to another person, not just yourself. Hey, I'm going to wean myself off the porn. I'm going to do this. And then you report back to them. And if you're able to do that, well, good for you. My guess is over time, you might find yourself becoming a little sloppy around it, and it sort of re-enters your life more and more. And if that's the case, then you might need to look at it more like an addiction. And if it is an addiction for you, then yes, you need to stop. I don't know if you stop forever, but you certainly need to stop long enough, a couple of months, to take a really good look at it.
So can sex addicts truly have love if they have intimacy disorder? If so, what type of love is it? I have a problem believing my husband when he tells me he loves me when he's been with hundreds of prostitutes.
Okay, well, first of all, I understand completely that you don't believe that. And I actually believe that your husband, that he does love you. And that's because I understand how these men think. And the reality is that when he is going off and doing the hundreds of people, that he's not thinking about you are the furthest thing from his mind. He is able to compartmentalize in his head all of that behavior, all that crazy sex and whatever it was, from home, family, partner. And in his mind and in his heart, home, family, partner does still mean love, connection. He just has been able to disconnect it from the thing that he knew, if you knew about it, would break all of that. Well, now you do know all about it. It doesn't mean that he hasn't stopped loving you in the way that he's always loved you. It's just that he's been very broken. I think, Tammy, I wrote this down. So let me explain what treatment does. I have an image for this. I want you guys to know that I think that most people, when they come to us with questions like this, or if they come to the treatment center, if they're at Seeking Integrity, how I picture you guys is you're like a piece of glass that fell on the floor and broke. You are all in pieces. And if treatment does anything, if we do anything, let me tell you what we do. We take those pieces and we shape them like a puzzle, and we start to fit some of them together for you. You then go home with pieces of broken glass that have outlines and are organized so you can begin to put your life back together. That's what we do in treatment. Sometimes you don't know, if you don't go to meetings, if you don't go to therapy, if you don't go to a treatment center, you're just standing in a pile of broken glass. You have no idea how to put that back together. I don't think that and I'm really wanting to give this metaphor, I don't think we put it together for you. I think we organize all those broken pieces into a pattern you can recognize and give that to you and your family and your therapist so that you can have a plan for how to fit your life together in a healthier way. But the life you've been living is very broken, very compartmentalized, very problematic. And so, yes, I know that the people that I work with do love in their way the person that they are with, and they have managed to block out the incredible pain it would cause you if you knew what they were doing on the side. In some ways, and I hate to say this because Lord knows it's not what you're going to want to hear, the more and harder your partner tried to hide what he was doing from you, probably the more love he had, or at least the more fearful he was of losing the relationship. Because I do work with people who don't give a shit. They just act out and their partner finds out and they don't care if it hurts you. You're just going to put up with it. So, it's all kind of broken and doesn't make sense. But yeah, I think there's probably love there.
Well, I do too. And I think, you talk, First of all, I think as addicts, when we're in our addiction, we are so numbed out that, you know, we're not in touch with any kind of feelings or whatever. And, you know, being with hundreds of prostitutes, that is not intimate. That's just sex and body parts. So you know, like Dr. Rob said, you know, I really do agree that, you know, he believes he loves you as well. I love that analogy of the broken glass, Dr. Rob. I just wrote that down too. Yeah,
I have
that's such a good
broken
visual.
glass into puzzle pieces. That's what
I
we
did.
do.
I actually organized the glass. Yeah, yes. So I agree with that. So, you know, I do really believe that there's healing, and I believe that, you know, as time goes on and you're both able to heal, you know, an intimacy disorder is like anything else. You can get healing from that.
And
So
I want to give you another example, which I'm going to stop tonight with. You know, I have worked with men who have hit their children, hit them, beaten them, yelled at them in their addiction when they were not working on themselves, when they did nothing but work and take, you know, when they weren't present for their families. And then if asked, you know, the next day or the next morning, do you love your child? Oh my God, they would give their life for their child. So you might ask, well, how can someone who in a fit of anger hit that kid and still love them, right? And the answer is because they're a little bit broken. And that part of them that deals with anger is not as connected as it should be to the part that loves them, that their emotions get out of hand and their hand flies, or they say something before they're able to stop it. In a way, it's not that different. You can have someone who loves you and then is so out of control that they do things that are the opposite. And it doesn't mean that the love is not there for you. It just means that they're not fully there for any part of their life. And they have a lot of work to do. So with that, I'm going to go have dinner. And thanks, Tammy, for your time.
Thank you all, and thanks for your questions. And next time you'll know, because we ran out of time, that you need to keep asking those
early.
questions. Yeah, so thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening. Bye for now.
Bye.